Andres from Doble Sports back with another video following the Mexico national team's first game in the 2025 CONCACAF Gold Cup. Mexico played against the Dominican Republic in Los Angeles and were able to grind out a win with the final score of 3-2. And while I get that usually the trend or saying is, a win is a win, regardless of how you get that win. This is one where I will say I am not happy with how Mexico played in this game, and nor should the fans or players. This was abysmal, and this was not convincing in any way or form. This was a game they should have won at least 3 or 4-0, but terrible defending out wide and a poor midfield substitution made this 10 times more stressful than this should have been. And the fact that guys who should clearly be starting on this team are not, will not, and it did not help at all. Outside of the players who played terribly in this game, there are two possible reasons for why the game unfolded in the way that it did, where this 3-2 loss felt like more of a disappointing draw for Mexico. The first possible reason is that both Javier Aguirre and Rafa Marquez, who is the assistant coach, were trying too hard to essentially not show their cards, not show their poker hands, that ace up their sleeve, if you will, to where it essentially allowed the Dominican Republic to make this a close game. The second possible reason why Mexico made this game stressful was that they did not take this game seriously enough. They underestimated their opponent, given that the Dominican Republic is making their debut in this tournament. Again, there were guys on the bench that should have been starting, like Marcel Ruiz and Chino Huerta. That is inexcusable, as even the top teams in the world, regardless if they are playing against a smaller team, will always start their best players in any meaningful game. It is only if it is an absolute blowout where they will then substitute out most of their main players. All of this resulted in what we saw in this game, where Mexico played incredibly boring and pragmatic, and then in the second half won in a stressful way that was preventable. 3-2 was the final score. Mexico grinds out a win against the Dominican Republic in the opening game of the Gold Cup tournament. Here are Mexico's grades for this performance. Goalkeeper, B-. Luis Angel Malagon had a shaky game as the starting goalkeeper, making 3 saves but also conceding 2 goals. Definitely not ideal. On the first goal by Peter Gonzalez, Malagon, like most of the defense, was caught completely flat-footed. Granted, a fan was dumb enough to kick a second ball onto the field, which caused a bit of a distraction. However, to still be that flat-footed and off guard is a bad look for Mexico on all defensive aspects. As for the second goal, not great either, but honestly not his fault, as out wide defensively the fullbacks got completely burned on that play. And the shot deflected off Edson's leg. Edson, who tried the best he could to stop that shot. And then he made the 3 saves in the game. Not the worst performance ever, certainly better than Tala Rangel, but by no means the best performance either. Center backs, B-. Johan Vazquez did not play as he is still recovering from his ankle injury, and you can see they missed having him in the starting center back duo. Cesar Montes and Israel Reyes were the starting center backs for Mexico in this game, and they also had a shaky game like Malagon. On the first goal, Montes was very flat-footed and caught sleeping like most of the team at that moment. They also had some other shaky moments throughout the game. However, I will give them credit and say they did have some good moments, with Montes blocking a cross into the box and having a really good tackle won in the first half, which stopped a counterattack. Montes also scored what will probably go down as the weirdest goal of his life, as on that third goal for Mexico off a corner kick, the initial header from Edson Alvarez deflected off the back of Montes' head and in for the third goal. Which is why you saw Montes and Edson do that rock, paper, scissors celebration, as we were all unsure of who got credit for that goal. In the end, it was Montes because the ball did bounce off the back of his head, and I guess that does make up for some shaky moments from him in this game. As for Israel Reyes, He really struggled on the right side, but I don't think it was entirely his fault, as he had the burden of defending both the center with Montes as well as the extremely weak right side. Fullbacks. D. Mexico defensively out wide was getting beat down in this game. Jesus Gallardo was the starting left back and was caught sleeping on the first goal. And in the second half, many close and dangerous crosses into the box were coming from the left side, where Gallardo was giving them too much space and began to struggle to keep up with the pace of play as the Dominicans tried to get that equalizer. Meanwhile, in the right back position, Jorge Sanchez had a terrible performance. I can't believe I'm admitting this, but it's true. Sanchez somehow had an even worse performance than Charlie. He was the worst player on the field and was getting absolutely sauced on the right side. His inability to defend was the reason why Azcona scored the second goal for the Dominican Republic, getting beat on speed and giving Azcona too much space to take the shot. And when he gets beat, he will often just commit a foul to stop the play. Jorge Sanchez was a liability in this game and continues to be one for the team. Julian Araujo should have started instead. Midfielders. C+. Edson Alvarez was the heart and soul of the midfield and saved the grade here. He scored the first goal and contributed the most on Mexico's third goal. Individually, Alvarez gets an A+ grade. Eric Lira and Orbelin Pineda started alongside Edson. Lira went through the motions in his normal position as a defensive midfielder, but honestly, he should not have started in this game, as Mexico did not need two defensive midfielders in this game. The Dominican Republic played defensively for most of this game, giving Mexico the majority of ball possession. And with only one attacking midfielder in the starting 11, which was Orbelin Pineda, the midfield again could not create really much of any plays. This resulted in Mexico playing very boring and pragmatic football in the first half and struggling offensively outside of set plays for the entire game. Lira also was caught flat-footed and got nutmegged on the play, which resulted in the Dominican Republic's first goal, which was a bad look for him. And then Tronco Rodriguez entered the game in the second half, and the things the midfield did do right went completely out the window. Tronco, outside of a weak shot on target, was non-existent on either end of the ball. His incompetence left Lira in the midfield with no help in the second half. And the midfield looked worse in the second half. It was 11 versus 10 in the second half, and with Jorge Sanchez playing even worse than Tronco Rodriguez, it might as well have been 11 versus 9. Fortunately for Mexico, they are miles ahead of this Dominican team to where they can still win even in a case where they are down two quality players. Wingers, also C+. Piojo Alvarado was the only starting winger on the right side, and his performance resembled how Chivas played in the Clausura. Not good and very inconsistent. He had a couple of shots with the ball. One I believed was saved by the Dominican goalkeeper, but outside of that, he didn't do much of anything that made an impact. Alexis Vega came in the game at the start of the second half, and he was okay at the start, but really began to pick up the pace and play well alongside Chino Huerta when Huerta came into the game. Speaking of Chino Huerta, why was he not starting in this game? He came into the game late in the second half and instantly made the offensive front better, being fast, great with the ball, and creating plays. He came in as a substitute and was by a mile the best winger on the field. The fact that he only got 7 minutes of play in this game is absolutely criminal. Strikers, A-. Raul and Santi were the two starting nines in the game. Raul Jimenez continues to be the star for Mexico, scoring the second goal for Mexico and the team's only goal in the run of play. A great goal from Raul where he even nutmegs the goalkeeper on the shot. He almost had a second goal, but a great save from Javier Valdez stopped Raul from having that brace. As for Santi Jimenez, I'll tell you what, at this point, if he doesn't have bad luck, he has no luck. He had one shot that should have been a goal, only for it to get blocked on the line by a Dominican defender. Then he had another chance where he took the shot to the far post, but it just barely went too wide. Santi really struggles to score right now, and unfortunately one reason for that is that outside of those two chances, he really didn't have any chances because the midfield and starting winger didn't create in this game. Nevertheless, while Santi has been struggling to score, he still nevertheless was active and overall had a good game, as he did contribute the assist on Raul's goal. So overall, both players in the two-striker duo played well and contributed. I just wish the rest of the offense was built around supporting them, especially in the offensive aspects of the midfield. Head coach, D+. As the head coach, Javier Aguirre will take the 3 points, but there's much to improve on, as he made some very questionable decisions in this game. First, to Aguirre and Rafa Marquez's credit, they both did a great job tactically planning how Mexico would approach corner kicks, in a way where the more defensive players would push up and be able to contribute. This strategy worked out well, as Edson and Montes, who are normally defensive players, both scored on corner kick opportunities. After Edson's goal, you even saw Aguirre turn and point to Marquez and give him a thumbs up, crediting him for helping implement this good strategy. This was the good coaching from Aguirre in this game, and implementing the two-striker lineup as well. However, overall, this was not a good coaching job from Aguirre. As the head coach, of course, again, he will take the 3 points in any way, shape, or form, but there is much to improve on, and he made some questionable decisions. His first major mistake was not making a change at the right back position. He kept Jorge Sanchez in the full game when it was clear he was the worst player in the game. Why do that when you have Julian Araujo, who is a Premier League player, available and on the bench? I do not understand that. And the decision to pull Israel Reyes from the game and take Edson out of the midfield and put in Tronco Rodriguez when he's not physical, dynamic, or talented enough to play there was absolutely beyond me. Why do that when you called Marcel Ruiz a crack player after his performance versus Turkey? It should already be known that putting Charlie in makes it 11 versus 10. And with Jorge Sanchez already getting thrashed out there, why are you going to make a substitution that makes it worse for the team? Again, fortunately, this team is still miles ahead of the Dominicans to where they can grind out an 11 versus 9 win, but I don't see how this can be sustainable for the rest of the tournament. Look to see what changes he makes for the game on Wednesday against Suriname and see if he starts Huerta, Ruiz, and Araujo going forward, because that is who he should play next game based on the good and bad performances of the players he has given playing time to. He should also consider giving Gilberto Mora playing time in the next game as well. This tournament is the time to develop Mora, given he is a future prospect, and maybe he can help improve the midfield offensively. Fan base, B. Fan attendance at SoFi Stadium was definitely lower than usual. I addressed this in another video. All I will say is that it is really sad to see fans feel afraid to go to games because of what is currently happening. And I hope we find peace again, because it is nothing positive to see with the World Cup being next year. As for the fans who did turn out for the game, the fans were great and passionate as they always are. But again, a couple of rowdy and possibly drunk fans did interfere with the game. While nobody tried to invade the field this time, one fan did kick a second ball onto the field, which distracted some of the players on the throw-in leading up to the Dominican Republic's first goal. Again, there's a distinct line between being a passionate fan and just doing stupid things. Well, final score, Mexico wins 3-2 against the Dominican Republic in the opening game of the 2025 CONCACAF Gold Cup tournament. And for an overall grade for the game, I will give Mexico a C-. This is a win and 3 points in the group for Mexico, but it wasn't convincing, and it left fans with more questions and even some frustration than it did confidence. Look for them to try and play much better and be more convincing in the rest of the group stage. Andres from AA Sports. Leave a like and subscribe, and feel free to put your thoughts on the game in the comments. Mexico's next game will be on Wednesday versus Suriname in Dallas, where Mexico will look to get another win and hopefully seal their spot in the quarterfinals. Stay tuned in for more Gold Cup content on this channel as I try to cover as much of the tournament as possible. With that, thanks for watching and listening. Viva Mexico!